Political participation in Canada based on 2011 census data. Compared with similar countries, Canada has lower voter turnout and we participate in fewer political activities. Why is this a problem? It increases the likelihood of minority governments, which tend to focus on their short-term electoral prospects. It also increases incumbency advantage, so we'll make us stuck with the same leaders and their policies since they already have better odds with more recognition and resources. First, we'll run a reliability test on our political participation variables to see how well they're related. Next, we'll run a correlation to see the relationships between our variables. Afterwards, we'll run a first stage regression to see how attitudes and knowledge play a role in political participation. After, we'll run a second regression introducing two new controls which capture one's feelings with their own power and understanding. Rationale behind question and approach. Many pundits and politicians believe one of the reasons for low participation is Canadians are apathetic, cynical, or uninformed. Do these poor attitudes affect participation, or do they get blamed to deflect attention from government policy? Scholars say that it's a problem because there is a democracy deficit. For it to be healthy, it needs to represent the will of the people. The majority of Canadians actually support democracy, freedom of speech, etc., but they don't exercise their rights very often. Why is that? This research digs deeper into the real problem. Is it lack of desire? Or do people not participate very often because they don't feel they have enough choice, power, or understanding to change anything? The following variables are used to capture political participation, all of which require at least a little bit of effort and social engagement. They are actions, discussion, and actual voting. The standardized alpha is 0.676, which shows these variables are related enough to compile into an index. The mean is 5.09, which shows more Canadians are on the lower side of political participation. The kurtosis is normal, which shows that there is less Canadians with really high or really low political participation. Hypothesis for the independent variables. Cynicism. When the economy is bad and there's other major problems, people tend to blame politicians. Many Canadians believe politicians make a lot of false promises and that they can't solve our problems. When Canadians don't trust their politicians' institutions, they'll feel why bother engaging at all. Thus, I hypothesize that the more cynical you are, the less likely you are to participate politically. Apathy. Many Canadians are weary of campaigns over-promising and under-delivering, and exchanging attacks, so they start tuning it out. We're also weary of partisan media and ads, which oversimplify and dramatize the issues, so people just eventually ignore and start disengaging. Thus, I hypothesize that the more apathetic you are, the less likely you are to participate politically. 3. Level of political knowledge. If you don't understand what the issues are or know who the politicians are, then you're less likely to participate. Also in Canada, our political landscape changes quite fast with new people all the time, so if you don't know who they are, then you don't know who to choose. Both the independent variables of cynicism and apathy are dummy coded to compare the effects of being cynical and apathetic versus not. In our correlation matrix, we see that the strongest correlation is between political knowledge and political participation. The more you know, the more you participate. Outside of our research question, we see that the strongest correlation is between political knowledge and apathy, which makes intuitive sense. If you have political knowledge, this indicates your interest, thus you can't be apathetic. In our first regression, we see being cynical is insignificant. Although Canadians don't have a lot of trust in our politicians or institutions, it does not affect our political participation. By B-values, we see that being apathetic lowers your political participation by more than half a category. By beta values, we see that level of political knowledge has the biggest effect on political participation. The more you understand the issues and your influence in the system, the more likely you are to participate. The R-square shows that this model explains 4% of the variation, lowered by the insignificance of being cynical. The graph of the first regression shows the most significant independent variables of being apathetic versus not, and level of political knowledge. As we can see, as political knowledge rises, so does political participation. What's interesting is there's an overlap in some cases between being apathetic and also having high political knowledge. It shows that some people can know a lot, and perhaps it discourages them wondering what impact they can have in all of this. Hypotheses for control variables. Both of these controls are meant to capture feelings that you lack the power, choice, and understanding to participate politically. First, all federal parties are basically the same. If people feel their vote has no power to change anything, or they lack knowledge about the party's policies to differentiate between them, they're less likely to take action. Thus, I hypothesize that the greater you're feeling there's no choice between the parties, the less likely you are to participate politically. Second, politics are sometimes too complex to understand. If people don't understand how politicians and their policies affect their lives, and they don't quite understand how the system works and what role they play in it, they're less likely to take action. Thus, I hypothesize that the more people feel politics are too complicated, the less likely they are to participate politically. In our second regression, we see that our previous independent variables have become insignificant. What has a bigger effect on political participation is feeling that parties are the same and there's no real choice, which decreases your level of political participation by 0.29, and feeling that politics are too complicated to understand, which decreases your participation by almost half a category and has the biggest overall effect. The R-square increases from 4% to 10%, which shows your feelings about your own power and understanding of the system has a much bigger impact on political participation than attitudes or level of actual knowledge. In other words, it's not so much that people are unwilling to participate as much as they feel that they are unable to. The graph of the second regression shows that feelings about parties being basically the same and politics being too complicated are similar to each other. It's in a downward trend relating to political participation. The two regressions show through explanation that attitudes and level of political knowledge has a spurious relationship with political participation. What has a bigger impact is people's feelings about their own ability to have influence over and understand politics. As this research shows, the problem isn't that Canadians are apathetic, cynical, or unwarmed. Many of us just feel that we lack the power and understanding to affect change. Politicians sometimes play the apathy angle for their own strategy. For example, just in February, the Conservative government stripped Elections Canada of its authority to encourage Canadians to vote in federal elections. So when less people do turn out, they can just blame apathy. Scholars need to make politics more relevant to people by explaining how it actually affects your everyday life, and use less abstract concepts like democracy deficit. Our civic engagement is high, which shows that Canadians do act when they can see its immediate impact. For solutions, education should focus less on teaching values, which the majority of Canadians already believe, and more on the impact of acting and the consequences of